Dan, welcome to Camera Conversations. We were chatting lots before we hit record, so let's save some of that value for the listeners.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
And all the mutual friends that we've got, when I said that I wanted to have you on the show, they were saying Dan is so on it. He's got such high standards. He's consistent excellence. For the listeners, I think they want to understand, has that always been the case, or is that something that's been nurtured and grown over time?
There's a Japanese word called kaizen, and it means continuous improvement. So I've always been on a quest to become better. And my younger self, I started being a coach at 17, 18 years old. I won't say my age now, but it's been nearly 20 years. You do the maths. And at that time, I was discovering myself. For 5 years thereafter, I was still discovering myself. And now I feel, set in my ways. I know who I am, what I can do, and how I can help others. So I do have a very clear identity. But I suppose over the past 10 years, I've been very tactile in kind of who I am, how I deliver, and living by very, very high standards.
What's some of the work that you've done to take you from maybe that slightly introverted coach that I've heard you speak about before, where you were quite shy, quite not the self-assured gentleman that sits in front of me just now? What are some of the steps that have helped join the dots between then and now?
Being in rooms with people who are better than me in whatever they do, being a sponge, absorbing information and disregarding parts of it, but absorbing some that I feel will help me. And doing that not just once, not just twice, but doing that consistently over a sustained period of time. And that's really the key here. It's not this acute spike of doing it once or twice. It's doing it over now what is a 20-year time horizon and just chipping away. I'm an avid learner. I'll listen to at least 15 minutes of Audible every single day. And many might listen to that and think, oh, well, that's nothing. Well, it is something if you do it for 10, 15, 20 years, because it does compound. And that really is, if anyone wants to take something away from this, is compounding effect and compounding interest. It does work. It's
those consistent deposits. And I think a podcast like this one, the people that listen to it, they rail against, or they try to rail against, feast and famine. Because we've all seen people, particularly at the time of year that we're recording, they start the year with their best of intentions. They start the year with this intensity of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and then by whatever date it is in 2026 it falls off, which is just exactly what we would disregard. So while 15 minutes might not seem like tons and tons and tons, but you always adhere to it, and I would much rather adherence to a small but meaningful habit than a burst of activity where you outshine everyone else but then you fall off very, very quickly.
James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits. 1% better every day yields a 37-time improvement over the course of a calendar year. So as we film this in the middle of December, and I'm sure this will land probably in and around early Jan, people are looking for that, okay, I'm now going to take care of myself. I'm now going to execute. I've set my goals over the festive period. This is my time. New year, new me. We hear it all the time. And though I can absolutely champion the intention, unfortunately, sometimes the execution is suboptimal. And then come late Feb, and maybe even earlier for some, they've fallen off track. And that's sad for me to see, because they want to go from zero to hero too quickly, level 0 to level 5. Well, actually, liken it to a video game. Level 1, complete that level. Level 2, complete the level, and so on and so forth. And what that might look like contextually to people from a training point of view is December is a time for many, the festivities of overindulgence, going out socializing, absolutely fine. Do whatever you choose to do. You've earned that, so to speak. But then doing no training in December to then doing 5 sessions a week in January because you've got this new impetus and it's your year, that's problematic. Due to an acute spike in training lows, that's going to, 1, increase the risk of injury, and 2, most likely mean that they're going to fall off come Feb.
Such a good point. And you have a phrase that's called start where you stand. And for the listener that hears that for the first time, I hope that image is visual enough for them. But let's go in a little bit to that in terms of what that might mean for somebody in reality.
Start where you stand, so identify where your feet are now. And we're living in a world where social media, there's pros to it, absolutely there is, for inspiration, motivation, but there's definitely another side to that.
The fact I can watch your stuff for free, and the fact there's 340 odd episodes in my archive with all sorts of experts, and you just can put that on your Spotify when you're driving or when you're in the gym, it's unbelievable. We really do stand on the shoulders of giants now, but as you say, it can have that negative side where you see what somebody who is so far ahead of you on the roadmap is doing, and you almost feel a bit disconnected from it.
Exactly that, and comparison is the thief of joy. People put their best self on social media. So for someone who maybe is earlier on in their journey, they haven't really got their identity, they haven't really broken inertia and got the wheels turning, their environment isn't set up for success, they could look at that in a negative light and be, I'm not worthy, I'm not worth this, and that's problematic. So I think setting your environment up for success and starting with small wins is really, really key, and then utilizing things like the people around you and maybe social media to some context to then help you get to the next level, absolutely fine. But the problem is if you're very early on in your journey, you don't know who you are, you don't know where to start, you don't know where to turn, you look to the wrong people for motivation and inspiration, then that can be a downward spiral.
When I think about your journey, and we're talking about this sort of slightly introverted trainer to the guy that's out there publicly now and seen very much as an expert in his field, what were some of the small wins that you started to stack outside of course, the consumption of quality stuff on Audible?
It's really interesting because the introvert that I still am, to be honest, I like my own company way too much. I could quite happily sit there on my laptop, do some work or read a book and stay at home than going out and socialising. I get enjoyment and fulfillment out of that. Probably a little bit too much, so that it's weird. But anyway, so I remember looking back at 17, 18 years old at Virgin Active in Staines, where I was folding towels because I didn't want to engage and have conversations with people. That's how bad it was. I didn't know how to do that at that time. So it is a skill. Speaking is a skill. What we're doing now is a skill, and it's a skill that can be refined like any other skill out there. So if someone is an introvert or if someone hasn't spoken in public or they don't have the confidence to do so, rest assured, start stacking some small wins and you will improve over a period of time like anything else. I remember there was a client, Darren Lafferty, this is many moons ago, Colin, and he was an NLP practitioner, and he was a bit brash and flash at the time. He turned up in his Ferrari, but I was a young kind of, that's interesting to me. And I was seeing him, or he was seeing me, I should say, 3 times a week. It was the other way around in terms of who got the value. Without doubt, I was a sponge in that moment and absorbing information. Whether I was tactile and knew what I was doing at that age, I can quite literally say I probably wasn't. But
it's unconscious competence at that point.
Exactly that. Whereas now, and over the past, I say 15 years, it's been absolutely intentional.
Yeah, get me around the people that are going to level me up. Whereas at that stage, there's something that's drawing you to him because he has the trappings of success. But after each PT session where you're delivering fitness value for him, maybe nutrition value for him, he's giving you mindset value. And it's not luck, but it's circumstance that you were drawn to it for some particular reason.
Exactly that. And I suppose it takes the right individual to absorb that information and process that information at the time. I can quite literally say I was giving him hardly any value, but he was giving me value. And that was quite an important moment looking back in hindsight of what shaped the path that I was then going down.
For too long, Brits have not been able to invest like Americans. They've not had the same confidence, the same clarity, or even the same returns. Think Money is here to change all of that. And today's podcast is sponsored and supported by the Think Money Academy. You'll know the founder, David Bell, who was a hugely popular guest on the podcast during 2025. And he has one simple mission. I only care about Brits investing more in shares. Their system teaches you how to trade like a pro rather than a punter and remove that stress, noise, and chaos of trying to beat the market with things like day trading. And instead, you're going to use non-emotional, systematic, trend-based following. People inside the academy have had incredible returns, 56% on Kratos, 60% on GoDaddy, and even 218% on Robinhood, all by following their framework. If you want to invest today and learn how to invest properly, you can hit the link in the show notes and take the assessment and book a call. And don't forget, you can use the code CAMBRO for 10% off. The link is think-money/academy. I think when we reflect in these moments, there's a concept from a lady that's been on the show twice, Dr. Meg Jay. She's a psychologist from the US, and she talks about identity capital and almost viewing this identity capital as a bank account that you can deposit into regularly. So we're speaking about you being around an NLP practitioner that can teach you lots of different things. We're speaking about you depositing the 15 minutes on Audible regularly, and at points in time you will withdraw from that bank account and use it in the situations that you've gone on to do. So whether that's growing the business, whether that's growing your body, whether that's growing your mindset, you're like, oh, I learned that from such and such back then, I'm going to use this now. I think people should be trying to consider what experiences, what mentors, what experiences or times that I spend can I continue to use to deposit into this identity capital, because best believe I'm going to use it at some point.
Input equals output. What you feed yourself, what you put in, it can lead to what you take out. Dr. Andrew Huberman talks about neuroplasticity. The brain is malleable. What you feed it, you can absorb and then you can apply, and it can change. So you've got to be very careful with what those inputs are. If all those inputs are political affairs, the news, and whatever other rabbit hole you want to go down, then that can be problematic. For me, I completely branch away from all of that. In fact, I said to you pre-pod, don't ask me anything about politics. That's not my bag. I'm the high performance guy, because I don't want to know about any of that, because my outputs are very important to me so I can impact and influence those around me. So I'm tactile about my inputs, whether that's Audible, whether that's powerful conversations. I'm very mindful of the rooms that I put myself in and those that I spend my time with.
I really like that, and I think it's really practical because I believe we have a set amount of bandwidth that we can assign to particular things. So if you are down the rabbit hole on every conspiracy theory, every news article, every bit of gossip in the boys group chat or the girls group chat that you're in, you're taking energy and focus away from something else. And again, before we hit record, I mentioned I went fully self-employed in July of 2025, and I came off X for about 2 months because I was seeing stuff on there that was taking my energy away. It was making me angry, it was making me annoyed, making me agitated, but there was nothing I could do. There was no general election for me to vote in, there was no protest for me to go and attend. So instead, come off that and then focus on maybe listening to more Hormozy, or listening to more Daniel Priestley, or listening to more Chris Williamson, whatever it was that allowed me to feed the machine. And I think, as you say, your inputs will equal your outputs, so choose wisely.
Exactly that. And Jimmy Iovine talks about this on the Defiant ones when they sold Beats to Apple for $3 billion or whatever it was. Be like a racehorse. The reason racehorses wear blinkers is so they don't miss a step. One of my key traits of a high performer is single-minded focus. And the problem in today's world, going back to social media, is left, right and centre, you're getting pulled. You're getting all these inputs that then feed into your output, whether it's conscious or unconscious, whether you know it's happening or not. Like I say, the brain is malleable, neuroplasticity, that's something we've got to be very, very careful of. So I think making a conscious decision, firstly, the first sign is awareness. You had self-awareness there to say, this is not appeasing me right now. I'm now leaving my role of employment. I need to be dialed in and I need to really focus on this to get to where I need to go in a moment that was probably quite, am I making the right decision? I'm sure I can say that. And you were very tactile in that moment of self-awareness to say that's not aligned with where I'm looking to go.
You're just stacking the deck in your favour, because things are going to be really, really difficult, or they're going to be more challenging than you expected. There's going to be a curveball. Yeah. And you're just preparing yourself in the best possible way. And I know we're going to speak about training, nutrition, recovery, mindset, the 4 pillars of your business and your coaching. But if you can recognise, as you say, from an awareness perspective, I'm going to take on something I've not taken on before, I better tick these boxes in the background so that I can best do that particular job or role, or tackle this experience with the most bandwidth and the most energy and the most focus. Whereas you could easily, as you say, in the age of distraction, spend so much time doing other things.
Let's use bandwidth like this glass of water, right? So in essence, if I put more water in, that overflows like a volcano, so to speak. So we don't have an infinite amount of space. So let's reference bandwidth like that. If you're constantly putting things in that are not aligned to where you need to go, that's going to be problematic, because then you do not have the bandwidth to then move things forward in the way that you want to go with what you're focusing on. So I think, I often use those types of analogies because, again, very visual, but you've got to be very careful with that.
It brings things to life. On the self-awareness piece, I have to ask you, because I've heard you share before that your drive and your personality means that you're always looking at the next thing. And I think a lot of type A personalities, a lot of go-getters listening to the show will feel that same way. What have you done that's maybe enabled you to reflect that a little bit more and recognise the journey you've been on and the success that you've had, while of course still remaining hungry for the future?
Great question. This is something I'm continually working on. I had a strategy session with a couple of CEOs yesterday and we spoke about exactly this. Part of my business now, as we approach year end, is a reflection of 2025 and goal setting and vision planning for 2026. We build a clear roadmap around health, business and everything else in between. I'll be honest, I'm guilty of it, of moving on to the next thing. And Michael Jordan, it was absolutely evident when you watch The Last Dance. It was like, okay, what now, what now, what now?
It's actually quite scary to see how much he was focused on the next thing and how little he enjoyed the moment.
Exactly that. Exactly. That's what I was going to say, is that it was almost like, though he's the GOAT, right? You can't downplay that. But in the same breath, I think as normal humans who are trying to get ahead, we can say, okay, that's great, and I'm absolutely going to take lots of lessons from that. But there's also a couple of lessons there to say, I've got to sit with that moment. So what we do now, and whether it's 24 hours or 48 hours after an achievement, we sit with that achievement. We simply press pause. We see what we did well, what we could have done better, where the performance gaps were, reflect, review, and plan. We did it with Conor Benn post-fight. I literally came back from a 9-10 week training camp in the UK, straight back to Dubai, huge momentum after his incredible victory in the rematch. And now everyone wants a meeting. And now the art is in saying no to some and identifying which ones are going to allow us to get to the next level. So because of that, I don't feel like I had that real moment of reflection, which is why I'm very much looking forward to 4 or 5 days over the festive period to completely disconnect. I'll go away to the desert with my girlfriend, get away from the hustle and bustle of Dubai, because there's a lot of distractions here, and just press pause, because I need that personally. And I've got to be selfish in that moment to be selfless to serve others in 2026.
That's so intentional though. Physically, I'm going to move location. I'm probably going to do something with app blockers on my phone or come off Slack and Teams or whatever it is used to run your huge business. But many people don't build in those really intentional resets or pause moments. And while we all want to achieve a huge level of success, we want to keep pushing, you've recognized that your personality type will push you towards just go, 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 go. and instead you've been like, okay, so I recognize this about myself, so intentionally I'm going to do this, which means that I'll be forced from a positive perspective to pause.
Definitely. There's something called allostatic load. So a simple way, again, sorry for the terrible analogies here, but stress all goes into the same bucket. And it could be relationship stress, travel stress, it could be late nights, training stress goes in there, of course, business stress. If a lot of our clients are going through exits, that's a prolonged period of cumulative stress over a period of time that goes into that bucket. So that's allostatic load. So we've got to control that and have a self-awareness. I think high-level CEOs, you're completely right. Type A, foot on the gas, go, go, go. It's the what next, constantly chasing more, which is a great trait, but it's one, in my eyes, that has to be managed in a certain way. And it will, going back to allostatic load, it will lead to burnout, and it will lead to them breaking down. And it will lead to how that does present cognitive decline and this cognitive fog, if you like.
It's like reduced desire to train as well, reduced sex drive, all these things that are little warning signs, because the body keeps score. And a lot of people sometimes are like, oh, I can push through it. And there's definitely things you should push through. And then there's times that if you are that way wired and you're constantly chasing, you have to build in these things that you've done intentionally to say, let's hold our horses for a second, let's pause.
Definitely. And self-awareness is a key trait for a high performer in my eyes. So I'm getting to that point now of, I think I said to you just before the pod, like a lot of meetings are happening this week. It's been incredible, huge momentum after Connor's fight, closing lots of deals. We're going to impact a lot of people in January and moving into 2026 in general. And I'm very aware that I've just got to keep pushing right now, but I'm also very aware that I have to have that moment to pull back to then move forwards.
Yeah, I've said before, I'm not a big fan of alcohol. I don't really drink at all. I think I drank a couple of times in 2024, none in 2023, none in 2025 so far. But some people will have their rest and reset as maybe like binge drinking or partying or whatever as well. And it's about finding what might be better for you. So if it is a staycation, if it is a holiday, if it is a break, if it is, for me, it's not perfect, but going for a cigar with the boys and talking about it, and while I maybe not be doing my health the best with that, it does force me to pause and reflect because it's slow.
Yeah.
And it's the slow life in terms of like we sit for an hour and we just chew the fat, whether it is about business, mindset, whatever it typically comes up, but you are paused. And it's about finding what those things are for you, whether they're small things like that for an hour and a half, or whether it is 3-4 days away with your missus to decompress.
Definitely, and each to their own. If people want to go out and they've had a really challenging year, busy year, great year, whatever you have contextual to you, if you want to go out and enjoy the festivities and have alcohol, absolutely, like go and do that. But I would always say have a plan then for the days that follow to say, right, I'm now going to get back on track. I've scratched the itch, so to speak. So whatever that looks like contextual to you. To me, going away to the desert for 3 or 4 days is great. Similar to you, I think I've had alcohol twice this year. Once for my birthday, once for my girlfriend's birthday. Will I over Christmas? Potentially. I might do one night, and then that'll be me, because I'm sure how I feel is something that I just won't want to feel like that way again,
Do you want to turn your LinkedIn into a selling machine rather than a time sink? Well, that's exactly what I'm helping you do with my step-by-step guide that shows you exactly how I built my brand, generated inbound leads, and turned my network into paying clients. It covers everything on how to write your profile, post structure and templates you can use, as well as outbound messages to your ideal clients to book meetings with them. This is the exact framework that I've used myself and teach inside my coaching program, condensed into one short, actionable guide that you can implement straight away. You can grab your copy at the link in the show notes or DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn, the word guide, and I'll send it straight to you.
You mentioned the Conor Benn fight. You were involved in the first camp and, of course, the camp where he was victorious. What do you think the difference was between the two?
Mindset. Calm amidst the chaos is something we brought in camp 2. Fight 1, there were lots of unknowns. Conor stepping up 2 weight classes from 147 to 160, boxing in front of 62,000 people in the heart of London, boxing in the UK for the first time in 2.5 years. The fight was steeped in family history as well. The fathers fought in the 90s, and it really is a huge event in the UK. It galvanised the British public and global audience. So the weight on that young man's shoulders with what he's been through as well was vast. Going into the first fight, he went in with a lot of emotion, raw emotion, which sometimes with an athlete like Conor isn't always a bad thing, providing it's controlled and the game plan is adhered to. But at times it wasn't, and he won't mind me saying this. And ultimately we lost the fight narrowly. It was a great performance, a performance that he could have been proud with.
I think he got a lot of credit for how he came out swinging, so to speak. But maybe that comes from the emotion spilling over slightly versus the second fight where it was just control, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. So in essence, to your question, the first fight he was a bit gung-ho. The second fight we were tactile, and actually I paraphrase here, there's a Zheng Zhu quote or whatever it is in The Art of War. It's not the hothead who wins the war, it's the calm, calculated warrior. And really that was the direction and narrative for the whole camp. And that wasn't just from me, that was from everyone. The energy was very different. Conor was very calm, and looking back in hindsight, the first fight had to happen, and probably happen in that way, for us to say, right, what did we do well? Because a lot we did do well. It was a great camp. He hit all of the physical qualities. He was absolutely brilliant. We took ourselves away to Mallorca for it. It was a great environment. This camp we did in the UK. He had his family closer. We had an incredible camp from a performance metric point of view. I track all of the data. But the real takeaway was that the energy was very different. And Conor now, the unknowns from the first fight were now known. Doing the ring walk, the handling the moment. So all of that we took into the second fight for a very different outcome and performance.
It's funny, you mentioned the first fight maybe had to happen for the second fight to be a success. It's almost like an unteachable lesson.
Yeah.
So being much more rich won't make you happy. That new car won't change how you feel about yourself. That girl isn't good for you. She's just hot and hard to get. Okay, recognize that and then appreciate it. So in the same way, you can't fight purely or mostly with emotion because you're up against a great operator in Eubank Jr. But this time round, slight tweaks to the camp, slight tweaks to maybe the self-talk or the emotion that he went into the fight with, and look at the different result. And I think anyone who watched the first fight knew that Conor was capable of winning, but I don't think everyone was like, oh, he's definitely going to win the second fight. I think they knew it was going to be a really tough fight, but I think his performance was so comprehensive and his victory was so comprehensive, it was almost undeniable.
Yeah, exactly that. It was an incredible masterclass, winning each and every round, putting him down twice in the last, and it's just an incredible performance. We knew he could do that, but going back to what we said there, you don't know until you've seen. We've seen it in sparring, but that's very different. It's handling the moment, and how can you then do what we know you can do on the biggest stage in front of millions across the globe. But now he's done that, and he can take those lessons from fight one and fight two into whatever he goes on to do next.
What traits does Conor have that people could emulate to be a success in their variation or their level of high performance?
The one word that screams out is resilience. And this could be a high-performing CEO, an everyday athlete, any human. To be able to overcome setbacks in life. Everyone hits a hump in the road at some point. We know it's not a linear path, but fundamentally champions are made from overcoming those humps. And many do crumble when they hit a setback. They just don't know how to overcome it. Conor has that, and he's overcome a hell of a lot to now be in a position that he's in, which he's made life-changing money. He's got a beautiful family. He's achieving a lot. Some people love him, some people hate him, but people are talking about him.
I think he's got a lot more respect now, though. I think people really are like, wow, to come back from losing the first fight where, by all accounts, everyone was like really impressed by his performance, to still lose must have been very, very sore. Whereas now I think people look at this guy is a serious operator and he's got the credibility of this generational win, if you consider, like you say, the family history and the kind of beef between the two of them as well.
Definitely. And like, if you're a boxing purist as well, you'd know that people knew Conor Ben could fight. They knew he had emotion. They knew he had aggression. But many didn't know that he could box behind the jab at mid-range and box the way he did for 12 rounds and be disciplined for 12 rounds. Fundamentally, discipline was the driver to success in fight two. And he had that and he showed that, and now we know he can do that. So that's a key, because he's a dangerous fighter for anyone.
You mentioned the phrase calm in the chaos. I'm a big fan of what I would call anchor phrases. So for the sales coaching guys that I work with, it'll be sometimes be avoid, show up and throw up. It'll be 2 ears, 2 eyes, 1 mouth, to make sure that they're a bit more consultative on the discovery calls. Calm in the chaos is clearly a phrase that was probably being spoken about in the camp. Were there any others that you used to hold him to particular frameworks or particular styles that you wanted him to implement during that 8-9 weeks you were together?
No specific terms. Like calm amidst the chaos and discipline were key. Like, they got spoken about a lot, and I was very tactile in how we threw that into every conversation. But from a overall performance viewpoint, a key component that we improved this fight camp was recovery. So if you look at the 3-pronged approach of stressor recovery adaptation, the stress recovery adaptation cycle, the training piece from Conor, so the stressor, he'll always give 100% irrespective. There is no 60% with Conor Ben, which I love as the head of performance, but I also have to manage that the right way. So then I'm thinking, well, what can I do to drive performance forwards to make him a better athlete and a better fighter and give him the best chance of victory on fight night? Because that, in essence, is my role. Well, I can look at the recovery piece. So we did a lot around recovery. We got him some Happy Ears earplugs, which are the best earplugs out there. I haven't invested in the company, I promise, but generally speaking, they are incredible. And we know the number one recovery tool that costs absolutely nothing is sleep. So if we can optimize the sleep environment, then we're going to be improving overall performance. So we got some Happy Ears earplugs, we got an eye mask, we created the room that was made sure it was a dark room, minimal blue light exposure, blue light glasses, and ensured that sound was minimal as well. So there's some basics. What we added as well from a recovery point of view was a hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber. So we also tracked the data on Whoop. I had his Whoop on my phone, so I was looking at
I've heard
scores.
you say this before. You weren't giving him the data because he would get in his own head.
Yeah.
So your expertise comes from, don't you worry about that, Connor. I'll tell you what the data says and informs us. You just follow the protocol and detach from it.
Connor would say this, like literally all he has to do is eat, sleep, train, repeat. I take care of every other small detail because I know that it plays a role. And something we say is if it doesn't make the boat moves faster, disregard it. And we had the whole team in synergy and sync, rowing in the same direction with one sole goal. And that was a goal that we all had together. And exactly that. So Connor, all he had to do, so with the Whoop side of things, there may be the odd white lie, but thankfully this camp, his recovery scores and sleep was incredible. So it was minimal this camp. Last camp, there were definitely some white lies when he said, Dan, how's my scores? And, maybe it was amber and I'd say it was green. But this camp, we really didn't have to do that because the H-bot was a really good addition for us from a recovery point of view.
I've also heard you say that the type of personality that Connor had, he was quite keen to do more of the recovery almost in a way that would tip over to being unhelpful. And I think many people listen to this, maybe they do their ice bath, they do their sauna, and sometimes they don't quite get the dosage right because they're so inclined to be like, I'm going to recover harder than everyone else. And you're like, okay, I know you want to, but there is a level or a dosage across a week, a month, a quarter, whatever it looks like, where it's helpful versus becomes actually unhelpful to your recovery.
Exactly that, yeah. Perfectly put. There's the mountain analogy we talk about. We want to continue to climb the mountain, reach the summit. We don't want to come back down the other side. Coming back down the other side means you're doing too much. You're not getting the adaptation or physiological response you're doing from that intervention. So let's use an ice bath because it's a perfect example. And many people who join our program, they have these conversations. Oh, Dan, I'm doing a sauna, I'm doing an ice bath, but I'll be honest, I don't know when I'm meant to do it, how long I'm meant to do it for, what temperature I'm meant to have it on. So if we're looking at weight training in the gym, the goal is to create some cellular swelling, some muscle damage, and to adapt, to adhere to the principle of progressive overload. If you do that and then you go straight into an ice bath thereafter, you've raised inflammatory markers in the gym. You actually want that to naturally kind of be brought back down, if you like. The ice bath will blunt the adaptive response and physiological response from that training session. So actually you look at it, is it a positive or is it a negative? Well, you'd actually say it's a negative in that moment. So you've got to be very tactile of when you use it. If, for example, you go out and do a half marathon, okay, we know that the stress of that is very high, the volume is very high, the duration is very high, you're putting lots of force through the ground in every single step. That's probably a good time to use an ice bath after to promote the recovery process and speed the recovery process up. So you've got to be quite tactile, and we look at the overall training week and say, right, okay, ice bath here, sauna here, based on what the goal is.
We're diving around between the 4 pillars that are fundamental to your business: training, nutrition, recovery, mindset. I feel we've got a lot of value there on the recovery side of things, but I know that mindset is one of the things that you really view as foundational. What are the main things that you focus on when it comes to working with a CEO, an athlete, when it comes to their mindset?
It starts with a goal. What are we looking to achieve? Because fundamentally, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get to that point? One of my favorite quotes is, if one does not know to which port one is sailing, no wind is favorable. You're quite literally going around in circles and treading water. So we get crystal clear with what success looks like, but we also look at the underpinning reason as to why they want to achieve said goal. Because if that goal doesn't intrinsically drive them and they're doing it for other people, or they're doing it for
validation online, etc.
Exactly, the wrong reason, should we say.
It's such a risk nowadays.
Exactly. So when they hit that proverbial hump in the road that we mentioned, going back to resilience and single-minded focus, they're just going to go off track. Whereas if they have a deeper intrinsic meaning as to why they want to achieve said goal, because it's going to impact them, it's going to impact their family, it's going to impact their health, it's going to impact their business, things that they really place value on, that when they hit the hump, they can keep moving forward. So step 1 is get crystal clear with the goal. Step 2 is create an environment that sets them up for success. Environment dictates outcomes for me. You lay down with dogs, you come up with fleas. If all your friends, we spoke about alcohol, if all your friends are going down to the pub and 4 of your friends are there, you'll be the 5th friend going down the pub and drinking alcohol, fundamentally. The other side of that is if all your friends have growth mindset, are having powerful conversations, are driving their businesses forwards, the likelihood of you doing the same is very, very high. And step 3 is consistency to the plan. So environment, goal, all of that, but you've got to be consistent. We spoke about James Clear. We haven't got to try and chase 20%, 30% every single week. We've just got to chip away with 1% better every day. People get so overwhelmed with growth. Oh no, I've got to do this, or I see that person doing that, or they've got this new watch, they've got this nice car. Forget all of that. Get your goal, reverse engineer, put the steps in place to reach that goal, and then just be consistent on your path. And when you hit a setback, know how to overcome it. Reflect for a moment, take that pause, and say, okay, I could have done this better, but now I'm going to move forward and get closer to my goal again.
So many strands there, Dan, but I want to go into the environment one in particular and lay down with dogs, you get fleas. Tony Robbins, absolutely love that quote. And we have a sort of Scottish one. It's like fly with the craws, get shot with the craws, and craws are crows. And that's exactly what you see. You see people maybe they hang around with the guys in town that are maybe doing illicit activities, they've got a lot of money. If you hang around with them, you quickly will get involved in that world, whether it's actually working for them or whether it's just being associated with them as well. And that can lower your frequency, your vibration, and who you spend your time with, and get you in a lot of trouble. I know from hearing your own story, you had a look at environment design to overcome this almost self-talk that you had around hating running. How did you approach that?
Yeah, so I used to have this negative self-talk of saying, I hate running. And though I coach it, I had to check myself for a moment and say, what am I doing? I'm doing everything that I say not to do to others, this negative self-talk. And if I keep verbalizing and vocalizing this, well, no doubt I'm going to anchor it and actually be that person. So I said, I'm not going to say that anymore. That was step one for me. And then I said, right, I want to get into running. I obviously know the benefits, and lots of people are getting into running, and I do want to do this. So how do I set my environment up for success to reach that goal? It's not going to be when I was living in the UK, because that's when my running journey really started. Getting up at 6:30 in the morning in the pissing down rain and going for a run. That's not something I'm going to be doing. I love my training. I love getting after it. But in reality, when I'm trying to break inertia and start a different trend of my journey, that's not going to be something I'm going to be doing. So my friend Jordan used to come and pick me up. So I removed friction there, take us to Richmond Park, great environment, lots of health conscious individuals, beautiful place. If anyone's been, lots of deers. So we used to run together, have powerful conversations. Jordan works in finance. He's got growth mindset. So we had some really good conversations. Didn't really think about the running. We were just doing it and chatting. Started low end stuff, 5Ks. Then we moved to 6, 7, and gradually, incrementally increased the volumes over a period of time. We then got to 10K. Jordan would then, after the run, we'd go for a bougie coffee. That's my vice. And then we go back home and he'd drop me home. So I set that environment up for success. I get my gym kit out the evening before. Jordan would pick me up. He's at the door. He's holding me accountable. Yeah, I'm the coach, but he's holding me accountable. He didn't know it at the time. We'd have the run. We'd have a reward mechanism. He'd drop me back. So to start my journey early on, they were the key components that I did. So for anyone listening to this who may be starting or recommencing a journey in January, that is what I'd be doing. I'd set a goal. I'd remove friction. I'd set my environment up for success, have a training partner who's probably a little bit ahead of you, that you want to be held accountable, that you respect as well, because you don't want to let them down. And then just start small, start breaking inertia and just get things moving.
Start with your standards, you said.
There you go.
You didn't go to running a 10K in the pissing rain, like you said. Instead, you built up to that by having the reward system at the end with the coffee, your friend, and the kind of social connection element to it as well. I think that's a fascinating example that people can utilize that framework of how do I remove friction? How do I make this more enjoyable than it would be? How do I make this connecting me with somebody that I want to spend time with? And then how do I have some sort of positive feedback loop at the end? And then how do I progressively overload within that to make that the case? And you could do that in business, do that with your brain, do that with your body. And I think it's refreshing to hear, and people listening to this know that you have such high standards, you're very consistent, you're very focused on excellence, but even you had to consider, how do I get this new thing into my life that I previously told myself that I'm not the guy that's going to be able to do that? And of course, if you tell yourself you're not the guy, you're never going to be the guy.
Exactly that. And I don't want to sit here thinking, or people thinking that I've cracked it or I sit here on my high horse. That's certainly not the case. I'm on a constant journey of, your first question, continuous improvement. And in that moment, I had to utilize my own frameworks and systems on myself, which I know they work. And actually the running journey is still ongoing, but myself, Jordan and Bradley did the Burj to Burj in Dubai half marathon. I know there's lots of savages out there who are doing a lot more than that, but for me, that was good, and I'm very pleased I achieved that. I set a target time and I achieved that time. So it really has been a great journey with running. I now run twice a week out here in Dubai. I thoroughly enjoy it. I do business meetings when running as well. I say, right, you want a meeting? Well, come and join me for a run and we'll have a chat.
It's called bundling from a time management perspective. Let's do two things at once, kill two birds with one stone.
This is more than that. What do we say? Tanning, chatting, running. Like there's loads of stuff going on there, but yeah, exactly that.
It's really good. Over the last 5 years, I've sat down with over 330 guests on Camera Conversations, from athletes to entrepreneurs, scientists and thinkers, all trying to answer the same question: how do we live, perform, and generally be better? I've distilled down everything that I've learned from that 5-year period into a brand new guide, 20 lessons from Camera Conversations, covering mindset, money, performance, and meaning. Inside, you'll find some of the biggest ideas from the likes of Chris Williamson, Craig Ballantyne, Sterling Cooper, NRL, and many, many more. These are not just sound bites, these are actionable principles and lessons that you can take on board. Whether you want to level up your mindset, your business, or your health, this guide gives you the shortcuts to do just that. You can hit the link in the show notes today to download it for free, or DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn, the word lessons, to get involved.
Let's talk about that training element then in terms of that pillar. What does a week look like maybe for a client that works with you or somebody that's looking to improve?
Everyone's different fundamentally. Like, this is not a cookie cutting plan. We start with data. We do comprehensive physiological testing on the front end. We do blood work. We have a team of doctors. Our USP, Colin, is all of our team work in professional sports. So someone joins us, a high level CEO, who doesn't really want to be thinking about their training. They just want to know that their plan is set up to enable them to get to the next level.
Like you said, the corner, plug it and play.
Yeah, exactly. So we start with all of the testing. We then utilize the data to then make better informed decisions. Okay, what are the goals? Well, let's use this data collection point to say, right, within 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, we want to achieve this. When we do your next round of testing in 3 months, these are the targets. So we hold them accountable with clear outcomes. And the high-level CEOs we work with are numbers driven. You know, they look at their P&L, they understand their numbers. Well, we use that same principle and method in our business because that's what excites them. But then they're held accountable with, one, our community, because we have lots of high-level CEOs in there, but also with myself and our team. We have very high standards, as you alluded to, and they know that, you know, they've got to adhere to those standards to a degree. It doesn't mean we're chasing perfection, to be clear. It doesn't mean they're eating chicken and broccoli. It doesn't mean it's restrictive. They can still go out and have a couple of glasses of red wine, and then we'll analyze the data the next day to make better informed decisions. So it is very bespoke and individualized. So in terms of, to your question, what does it look like? It starts with the data, and then we build a plan based on where they're at. I can't give an answer to say, oh yeah, they'll do this and this, because that's where the individualization comes in.
Agreed, and I think that's helpful for people to recognize, because if you had somebody that came on, and there's a phrase that I use in the sales coaching world, that prescription without diagnosis is medical malpractice. And you see a lot of people who have like a cookie cutter solution that they're just going to churn out. So if you went into the GP back in the UK and you sat your bum in the chair and you said, Dan, you're going to take these 3 pills 3 times a day for the next 3 weeks, and you looked at the prescription and you went, these are for headaches, it's my knee that I came to see you about. I think it's the same way sometimes when people are like, oh, you're going to do push-pull legs, you're going to do this high rocks training split, you're going to do this zone 2 work, before you've even seen what they might need to action based on where they want to go.
Exactly that. So it will start with their goals, and it will start with a comprehensive environment audit. What do you currently do? Yes, these are your goals, but how frequently have you trained over the last quarter? Oh, well, actually, Dan, I've trained 5 times. Well, I'm not going to start with 4 to 5 sessions per week then. Let's start with some small wins. Start where you stand. Let's, again, get the wheels turning before we start going with these huge, lofty goals. Because fundamentally, going back to identity, I would be setting you up for failure. Because why are these people joining my program? Probably because they've tried and failed by themselves. So they've joined this program, and if I set up with such a lofty goal, they try, they fail, how does that make them feel? Well, therefore, their identity is then going to be impacted because they will feel like a failure. I would much rather, over time, hit a goal, reward that, and say, well done, look what you've achieved, set another one, reward them again for hitting success. And then before you know it, you're 6 months into the journey, we've had 4 goals that we wanted to hit. They've hit every single one of them. How does that then make them feel? Well, that's the complete 180 shift of saying, I am someone who sets a goal and achieves a goal. So now, not looking just at their health and performance, we're looking at their overall life, of how they can take that into everything that they do.
Yeah, I have a really old episode I did as a roundtable with a couple of friends called Fitness is the Self-Development Gateway Drug. And I firmly believe that. And it's interesting, a lot of people you work with are incredibly successful in business, but maybe neglected their body initially. And then lo and behold, what we unlock, the new levels, when they sort out that pebble at the top of the self-development avalanche, which is having mastery over your body and what goes in your body, what you do with it on a regular basis as well. And it's interesting, I'm sure you have many testimonials I've seen where people are like, I thought I was doing well, and now I've mastered my body, and look at what I'm doing now in the business world too.
Definitely. We've got, I won't say their names, a couple that spring to mind, like savages in the business world. You know, they've got offices in New York, Dubai, London. And one individual, you know, incredibly overweight when he started the journey. I think he's lost 22 pounds already, but his starting position was very, not the greatest. So he's got a long way to go, but he's really embodying a life of high performance. He's like, Dan, I don't think you can improve me in business. You know, I can go into any room and I can close deals. I said, just give it some time, because there's also more to it than just how you're feeling and how you show up and cognitively how you feel as well. There's also the external perception of others when they view you. Let's be brutally honest here. If you're massively overweight, others are thinking, oh, is that the person I want to get into business with? What are their standards like? If they can't take care of number one, how are they going to partner with me in business?
That's evolutionary. People will deny that in the kind of woke day and age. They're like, oh no, health at any size. No. Like, we do make a snap judgment on somebody based on how they appear.
And it's BS for someone to say they don't. Let's be brutally honest here. As for me, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you embody these traits, you can take them into every aspect of your life. It doesn't mean you've got to be perfect, but it does mean you've got to try and improve each and every day. So can you be successful in business with being, morbidly obese? Yeah, you can. Absolutely you can. But is it optimal? And are there outliers? Yes. But then you look at the general overview and you look now at high-level CEOs who are exiting for 9 figures and really having impact on the world. Well, lots of them now embody a life of high performance that involves training, nutrition, recovery, and mindset.
Look at the journey with the likes of a Zuckerberg, a Bezos. They've all decided, I'm going to get a bit jacked. I'm going to learn how to do Muay Thai or fighting, whatever they're doing, and look at what it's going to unlock for them down the line. Now, people would maybe hold them up previously as like, oh, they don't look after their health. But they've woken up to the necessity of that, whether that's 2022, 2024, years after they initially built. And I think success leaves clues in that respect. These guys are now focusing on it. So if we're looking towards success by 2030, let's do some of these things that these guys clearly realize is important.
I say what got you to X level won't get you to the next level as well. It's having that self-awareness. These are, incredibly inspirational individuals who've achieved a hell of a lot on a global level. So they have that self-awareness to say, okay, I've done well, I've got to this level, but now actually if I want to unlock that level, I probably need to focus on X and Y. And the word that gets thrown out these days is longevity. Okay, now I've made my money, I've crushed it in business. Well, actually, if my health is not optimized, I might not be around in 10 years to enjoy the fruits of my labor or enjoy having my grandchildren running around and playing with them, or even having the ability to run around and play with them. If I'm overweight or I've got a bad back, I can't even play with them. So I think that's where your values and vision drive every decision, and getting crystal clear with what success looks like for you. And that's the key now, is enjoying the fruits of your labor and being around, not only to, so we say to our clients, not only to add years to your life, but add life to your years.
Yeah, it's quality, not just quantity. The other pillar I need to address with you is, of course, around nutrition, which has a key role in that weight loss kind of muscle gain thing that so many people will come to you as a focus for. Where do you even begin? What sort of philosophy do you have in place?
Yeah, again, everyone is different, but I'll hopefully give some takeaways. The World Health Organization's recommended allowance of protein intake per day is 0.8 grams per kilo of body weight. So for a 100 kilo male, that's only 80 grams of protein, which I can tell by your face, is ludicrously low. So we actually recommend, through our nutritionist, Dr. James Morhan, who's the head of performance nutrition with England Rugby, 2 grams per kilo of body weight, or anywhere up to 2.4 if I'm honest. But a good starting point would be 1.8 to 2 grams per kilo of body weight. Why protein, many would think? Well, protein aids muscle protein synthesis, the regeneration of tissue. You're in the gym, you're throwing those heavy weights around, you've crushed it, you've done the hard part. Well, you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you weren't adequately fueling with high levels of protein to help the regeneration and repair of tissue. Also, from a fat loss goal, it improves satiety, the feeling of fullness for longer. So increasing protein intake is very key. Carbohydrates aren't the enemy. Lots of people on our program are savages. They'll train a lot. They'll do more endurance-based events. Well, if you're not having carbohydrates, that can be problematic. So we call it fuel for the work required, based on Dr. James Morton of Liverpool John Moores University, and his research is, if your training load is high, you need to be sufficiently fueled to perform on that given day. We've used this with our boxers for a long period of time. Connor in his last fight had the luxury, because we were stepping up 2 weight classes, to be fueled for every single training session. It was great. But now, as he looks to potentially step down to 147 and his more natural weight, we can't have that luxury anymore, because fundamentally boxing is governed by making weight. So we're going to have to follow a high-low approach from a training load management and a fueling point of view. So for context for your listeners, sparring would be Monday, Wednesday and Friday. We know that they're high training days, and they are the most important day for a boxer from a psychological point of view. You have a bad spar, that's problematic, you get in your head. So we need to be adequately fueled for those given days. So they would be our high fueling days, because the expenditure and the energy output on that day is high. Then on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, with Sunday being the rest day, we pull back on fueling. We have lower energy availability, because fundamentally we've got to make weight. So you can then, as a listener, look at your own training and say, okay, well, I'm going to be training hard on these days. I'm probably going to increase my energy availability and carbohydrates around those sessions. Let's see how I perform. Oh, wow, my performance improves. I actually don't need to be in this severe caloric deficit. And actually, I was feeling a little bit of cognitive fog. I was feeling a bit of irritability. I don't feel like I was performing in the gym. I didn't really have the desire to go in and crush those heavy sessions. Maybe it's because I was underfueled. So nutrition is fundamental. So we've spoken about, obviously, protein and carbohydrates there. And it really comes back to your goal. What is your goal? If your goal is fat loss, you need to have a rough idea of RMR, resting metabolic rate, how many calories you burn at rest, and then look at how many calories you burn in a training session. You can then look at other things like thermic effect of food, but let's keep it super simple. You get those numbers, now you can plan your fueling. So let's say that number is 2,500 and you want to reduce body fat. Well, consuming 3,000 calories a day is probably not the best strategy there. So consuming around 2,000, maybe 2,100 calories, nothing too aggressive. I wouldn't go beyond 500 calorie deficit.
Massively affect performance, as you'll say.
Exactly. Because that's the thing, going back to the ice bath conversation as well. Similar thing here, Colin, is that, Dan said I'm going to be in a 500 calorie deficit. Well, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go with 1,000 calorie deficit and speed the process up. Well, actually, that's counterproductive from a hormonal point of view. Could also then go into a state of catabolism and start eating into your lean tissue, which can impact your RMR. It's just a downward spiral there. So having a strategic, clear plan over a sustained period of time and having professionals to guide and steer your journey is really key.
Have you ever rubbed beef fat on your face? Sounds crazy, but that's exactly what I've been doing since January. Those that know me well know that I'm all about removing toxins from my life. Things like getting a filter for my tap water, not eating ultra-processed foods in my diet, even spraying aftershave on my clothes rather than on my skin. And that got me thinking, if I'm not spraying aftershave on my skin because of it disrupting my hormones, what on earth am I putting on when it comes to a moisturizer? So when my good friend Adam Ash and previous guest on the podcast launched No Tox, it was a no-brainer. It's made from all natural ingredients, mainly from raw honey and beef tallow, and my skin has never looked better. If you want to benefit from the tallow glow and remove toxins from your life, then hit the link in the show notes to notoxskincare.co and use the code Colin15 for 15% off. You mentioned testing being fundamental to shaping the decisions you're going to make down the line. What are some of the main tests that you do with clients?
We do a DEXA scan, which is the gold standard test of body composition, looking at bone mineral density, lean muscle, body fat, plus many other metrics. It's great as well because we can look at limb-to-limb asymmetry. So if someone's come to us and they've had 2 ACL reconstructions on their left side, we can see the muscle wastage or potential muscle wastage on that side. So then how that informs our decisions is we get crystal clear with our goals, first and foremost. Okay, well, I want to reduce body fat. Not a loose comment. We want to say I want to reduce my body fat from 25% because I want to go to say 19%, for example.
It's that conviction there as well, Dan, isn't it? And everything you say has that firmness behind it in the right way.
Yeah, thank you. And then going back to the muscle side, if they've had that ACL recon and they've had muscle atrophy on that left side, for example, I'm not going to then go into their program and look at bilateral movements like squats and deadlifts because likely they've got a bit of an asymmetry there from left to right. So we're probably going to look at a little bit more unilateral single leg work to start closing the gap of the asymmetry because we know anything above a 12% asymmetry could increase injury risk. And that then feeds into the programming element. So that's the DEXA scan. The gold standard test of cardiorespiratory efficiency is the VO2 max. And we also now know, based on lots of research, and Dr. Peter Attia has been talking about this a lot, and sorry to sound morbid here, but there's a direct correlation between VO2 max improvement and reduce mortality rates. So that's a really cool metric. So we can now say, we will help you live for longer. We will reduce all-cause mortality by improving your VO2 max, your cardiorespiratory efficiency. And then we build a strategic plan based on data on exactly how we can do that. So that's the DEXA VO2 max. We do strength diagnostics as well. We have them on a force plate, looking at, again, how much force they're producing on each side, but measured in newtons of force. If one leg's producing, let's just say, 500 newtons of force, the other leg's producing 300, we've got a bit of a deficit.
It's these
there.
imbalances. And like you say, if you're doing a barbell squat, at some point when you're super fatigued, one side will be taking a lot more of the strain, and that's when we start to notice like, my left hip abductor's gone, and you're thinking, yes, because that left leg is taking so much more of the load across a set of 5 or 12, whatever it was.
And fatigue and load are the two key variables there that will likely address that, i.e. go too heavy, well, that's when things can occur. Or you're under fatigue and you're doing a big neurally demanding compound lift like you've mentioned, that's going to be problematic.
What are the most common deficiencies you find through your testing?
Asymmetry is probably the key, to be fair. That's the one that's quite alarming for some, and we really take that into the programming. Look, VO2 max is obviously, we have a number, and then we improve that number. So it's quite a very easy, you're here, we want you to get to here. Similar things with, any male who wants to join our program is body fat, right? Body fat, you're here. Generally speaking, we want to get it down to here. Lean tissue, we want to either maintain or increase lean tissue. We had a guy the other day, I won't say his name, but a big businessman in Holland, owns a lot of properties in Dubai, an absolute savage when it came to training. Too much so, actually. He was chronically fatigued, and he'd do 6 paddle games a week. He'd train every single day. I think he had 1 rest day. It was way too much. The cup was overflowing, so to speak. But he was a grinder, like that type A male, many people who join our program. So we started with education and really educated training load management and stress recovery adaptation cycle. And he really started listening. He then started applying. He then started feeling the benefit. Within 3 months, his body fat, and he started in a very good position, just to be clear, but he's 53 years old. His body fat was 19.8%, which many would take at 53. We got him down to 9.8% 4 days ago in his recent testing. But here's the key. His lean tissue at 53 years old went up by 0.5 of a kilogram, which is insignificant, but it didn't go down.
It's a recomp, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's, because typically, if you have a lot of fat to lose, there will be some muscle wastage along the way if you don't do it quite right, whereas he's actually improved from that perspective. So from a health and longevity perspective, probably even from like a caloric expenditure perspective, what he needs to maintain his physique is improved.
Exactly.
That's a win-win.
And his body composition's improved exponentially, but also his numbers in the gym. So now I've got complete buy-in from him, and he's certainly not the only individual who was underfueled and chronically overtrained. So it's that education piece first and foremost, is trusting the process, seeing the results, and now you're like, wow, tell me what to do and I'm going to do it.
From a hormonal perspective, what testing do you do on your clients? We
do comprehensive blood work. So that's I should have mentioned, that's one of our other tests.
We got into 4 and other things. Let's visit it now. That's my job.
There we go. So yeah, we do blood work as well. We have our blood work specialist in Australia, Dr. Pada, to analyse the bloods, and then we advise around supplementation. We also have Dr. James looking at the DEXA scans, and he can advise around that as well. So we build this comprehensive plan. After this today, I've got to shoot some Loom recordings for one of our clients who's just been to London to do his tests, and then we give them real feedback of the next steps of the journey.
I think listeners will be really interested what shows up in these business high performers as areas and gaps with their blood work, with their hormones.
Yeah, like a male who is chronically overtrained, his testosterone levels are, going to be rock bottom, and he just grinds through it. He doesn't realise until he sees the bloods, and he sees that actually he needs to address this, and he needs to not be in this chronic state of fatigue and stress. So that's quite good when we see the metrics, and then we can make informed decisions from there. That really is the key one that we see a lot.
What I saw from a number of friends that got blood work in the UK was vitamin D deficiency, and it was very, very common.
Even here. Even in Dubai, believe it or not.
Because of the UV, or?
A lot of people don't go outside that much. You think you're in Dubai, the sun's shining. It's not today, but the sun's shining generally, and they don't actually get outside and get some vitamin D. So we've seen lots of deficiencies in vitamin D over here, and we've supplemented with vitamin D and K3 as well. So yeah.
Again, you mentioned that recommendation from the health organisation about protein. The vitamin D recommendation is so low as well. So like, I personally supplement with like 10,000 IU, and I'm just like, okay, well, it covers my bases, and I feel good because I don't get a lot of sun in Glasgow, unfortunately. And then when you come to Dubai, you're working. I'm in podcasts. I'm doing coaching calls, I'm doing sales calls. It's just the nature of the game. And then you go out for dinner, and guess what? The sun's away.
Exactly that. You don't actually go outside as much as you think. Yeah.
One of the things I really wanted to ask you about was on the business side and the lifestyle side for yourself. And I know you read the book Who Not How. What are some of the lessons that you took from that?
Yeah, great book, Dr. Benjamin Hardy. So for me, it's been a huge shift in my business. I was the biggest bottleneck in business for a long time. I hold my hands up with that. I wanted to try and do everything. That's, again, in the nature of a high performer. But if you want to get to that higher level, you've got to delegate. Be a master delegator. Don't tell me how to do something. Find me someone who can do it.
What are some of the things you outsourced?
We've got a team of 15 at the moment. So we've got our direct kind of performance team of my head coach who do a lot of the programming, Dr. Padder who do the bloods, Dr. James do the nutrition. We've got other nutritionists as well. We've got other coaches as well. My head of operations, Jamie, he literally does pretty much everything. The business wouldn't move forwards without him. We've got graphic designers. We've got a marketing company who do my social media. So all of these, I say low-end tasks, if you like, I've delegated all of those so I can bring my best self to conversations like this and bring my best self to clients. So I think it's identifying your unique genius, as we say, and delegating everything else that isn't aligned with that.
Is there anything in your lifestyle that you've outsourced or taken off your plate?
Yeah, I'm just about to start a meal prep company here with Fit Meals. We got Owen Campbell on our program, and he sorted me out with some meals because I found since being back in Dubai, I do enjoy cooking, but I simply haven't had the time, and it's actually started impacting my nutrition. So again, it's identifying that nutrition is one of our 4 key pillars. If I don't nail that, it's going to over time impact my outputs. Input equals output, as we said. So I'm actually going to be getting my meals prepped, which is going to be
that was one of the first things that I did a couple of years ago, and not only did it take time away from me going to the shops to buy that food, it took bandwidth away from me deciding what I'm going to eat that day as well. And then of course the time save on actually prepping them as well. So it's like a triple threat in terms of unlocking that.
You're getting what you need from a fueling point of view that's aligned with your macros and caloric intake. The second one, as you've alluded to, is the cognition removed from thinking, oh gosh, what am I going to have now? Where am I going to cram it in? Oh, I'm just going to have this because this is easy and quick. And obviously the time that you get back as well.
Yeah, one of the other areas for me was a cleaner for the apartment. So
I've got that,
I think most people in Dubai have that, but in the UK it's less common. But if you can pay somebody £30 to clean your apartment, is your hourly rate greater than that, or can you serve yourself through exercise or socializing that allows you to do that during that hour that you wouldn't have done otherwise, and then you go back to work more refreshed? And I'm always thinking about how can I take things off my plate so I can reduce the load within the cup that we used that analogy earlier, to focus on things that really I can move the needle on and maybe others can't.
It goes back to, does it make the boat move faster? And if, again, you've used the word bandwidth quite a lot here, if all of your bandwidth is going to low-end tasks where you're in the weeds, then you cannot do the big needle-moving tasks, fundamentally. So delegate those small tasks. Let's have a task. Let's, for the listeners, identify those small tasks, whether that is someone prepping your meals, whether that is getting a cleaner, whatever that looks like, and then delegate those tasks, like Instagram as well, carousel. I don't do any of that. My team do all of that. We're getting a podcast now. This will be shared to my team. My team will edit it, and, that'll go up on social media. I don't touch that. All I say is yes or no, whether I think that's good or bad.
And you're not going to become a master at iMovie or CapCut or Adobe Pro. Why would you spend your time on that? Whereas if you can be speaking to a CEO about how you're going to support him with this program and then actually working with him, that's what makes the boat go faster. That's what makes the business grow, not the fact that you become a sort of mini marketer or somebody that's really skilled at making videos.
But it's also having the appreciation that does need to occur, but that doesn't need to occur with me.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk a lot about the difference between being busy or being productive. How would you explain that?
I'll talk about the term with my mentorship, don't be a busy fool. A lot of people are busy, but are they productive? Are they really moving the needle and driving the business forwards? So we do lots of tasks like a daily audit, building your perfect day formula. We use methods like the Pomodoro technique to have deep focus work, because people are there with their phones and they're getting pulled and getting dopamine hits every 2 minutes. They're not dialed in on said task. So they say they're busy, but you actually unpack their day and you do a deep dive. You're not productive. You're not getting what you need done. So we do every Sunday evening, we do a vision planning for the week. Big needle moving tasks written in the red pen, 3 to 5. I don't want more. I don't want a long, arduous list of 20 things to do because it becomes very overwhelming. 3 to 5 with the red pen, then maybe 10 to 15 with the green pen. But the green ones only get done when the red ones are done. They're the small, low-end tasks.
Yeah, let's eat the frog first. Yeah, I completely agree, because you can have this never-ending to-do list. And I think people who are in that productivity sphere, we know that to-do lists and time boxing are important, but our chimp brain kicks in and we get distracted, we get moved, and we maybe tick off stuff on the list that feel easy to do. And there's 2 strains of thought to that. So sometimes if you are really struggling in a day, I will say generate momentum and do some of the easy things first. So one of my friends is a really successful copywriter, works with a lot of fitness business actually. He says he often writes the easiest article or the easiest newsletter of the day first because it gets him momentum. But then other days he wakes up and he knows, I need to write these 3 sales pages, these 3 VSLs. I'm going to start with that because I feel good about it. And that's in his red pen. That needs to happen. Nice. And it's just recognizing how are you wired, how are you showing up on that particular day. It's almost like training load management at that point in time as well.
Yeah, exactly. Get the wheels turning first for some, for sure. If you've got a long, arduous task and you keep putting it off, do a quick, small task. All right, now I've got things moving. I'm going to dial in on this for sure.
What other productivity hacks or systems or processes do you have done?
I have a very clear daily routine, and it's not, again, a long, arduous list of breath work and grounding, but I'm very tactile in what my morning looks like, because I believe win the morning, win the day. You said about eat the frog. So I wake up in the morning, I don't look at my phone for the first 30 minutes. In Dubai, I'll walk onto my balcony, I'll get some natural sunlight. I have my 1.5 litres of water with a couple of electrolytes as well. and I'll just kind of process, reflect on what was yesterday, and of course plan for the day ahead. I would have this all mapped out on the Sunday anyway, so I'd know my tasks, I know my meetings, and then I'd actually go through my phone. I'd actually clear my phone for 30 minutes, do a 30-minute focus, just clear all the crap, if I'm honest, the WhatsApps, the emails, get them done. I then have my hour of power. My whole team know that hour, they cannot message me.
Undisturbed.
And that might sound full on, it's undisturbed, because my training is that important. If I have a bad training session, I can take that into my day. So I pride myself on dominating in the gym, and then I take that into my day, and I can win any task thereafter. I'll finish the gym, I have my fully loaded smoothie with creatine, protein, some blueberries, and then I'll start my meetings. So it's very tactile.
It's interesting. I talk often about having triggers that happen before particular things. So before a podcast, I listen to either the guest that's coming on or just something that gets me in the mood to have a good conversation. I have caffeine, sometimes nicotine. We'll maybe discuss that offline. And there's triggers that happen before that. So in the same way, your trigger for a really successful workday is that great training session. It's that healthy, nutritious smoothie, and then it's go time. And if we have these little things that we tick off and do regularly, we then know what comes next, and it's the whole James Clear thing. There's a cue for the habit that's about to unfold, and if that cue is a really positive one, we put ourselves in a great position.
Goes back to input versus output, and we've just got to be mindful of that. If in the morning the first thing one did was smoke a cigarette, sit at home, look at social media, then you're just going to be a puppet to your day. You're going to be incredibly reactive as opposed to taking back control and being proactive. I'm intentional for a reason, because this thing calls my name as much as it calls everyone else's name, but I just am very aware that I don't want that to take over.
Yeah, it's just resisting the temptation, because a phrase that you hear online sometimes, and it's quite trite, but I think cliches are cliches for a reason. They've been around for a long time. So easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. And I think, as we were discussing, the hard choices you make regularly, they compound, and our lifestyle suddenly appears great. So somebody sees the level of success, the business you've got, the body you've got, the lifestyle that you've got, and they think, oh, must be nice. But you're thinking, no, what all these deposits I've made over time that were hard in the moment because my phone was screaming, I wanted to check what was happening on Instagram, or check my DMs because I put a great post last night, but that's not going to serve me right now. Instead, I need to do this task because that's what's going to make the boat go faster.
Definitely, and fundamentally anyone can do it. I don't want to again sit here and people think that, oh wow, this guy's way far gone in terms of leadership qualities and the way he carries out his day. In January, if you want to make a shift, you can follow some of the methods that we've spoken about: setting a goal, reverse engineering, building a system, creating an environment. Start with some daily non-negotiables, 3 to 5 things you can carry out every single day without fail that get you closer to the long-term goal. For context, that might be drinking 2 litres of water. It might be having 2 grams per kilo of body weight of protein per day. It might be, though an arbitrary number, doing 10,000 steps a day, adhering to the principle of NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Well, there's 3 for someone. The 4th might be doing some form of mobility or physical activity on that day. And no one can say they can't do those things. The problem we've got, though, is their environment set up to do those things repeatedly and consistently over a sustained period of time so they actually see a win? Because as soon as they see a win, then it becomes incredibly motivating
feedback loop
to get going.
Yeah, sometimes we need that little nudge that's proof of concept. So, I've been doing my 10,000 steps and eating the protein, and I've been consuming less junk online. 3 weeks down the line, like, I'm looking a bit leaner. I'm actually a bit happier. I've got more energy. Cool. But stick with it long enough to see that. And I guess that's why you're saying start where you stand. And those things are very accessible and they sound easy or simple, but they add up to so much over a longer term.
And then you layer it. When I got the role as head of performance at Matchroom Boxing 8 years ago, I went in with supreme athletes at the time. They were winners with or without me. But I did an environment audit at that level, and I identified there were so many performance gaps. Did I, as the head of performance, go in and go, here's 20 things to do because you need it? No, because I had to get the buy-in, and I had to get the wheels turning, and I had to get the trust from these individuals. I quite literally started with, and though this is very basic now, this is 8 years ago, getting them tracking their heart rate data so I can understand what their current training is doing from a physiological point of view before I can make an intervention. The second one, using MyFitnessPal and track your nutrition. How are we going to plan this training and nutrition if we don't understand how you're fueled? Do those. Okay, now I'm doing those. And I think the third was around sleep, actually, creating an optimal sleep environment. Did them for 4 to 6 weeks, started seeing profound improvements. Now I've got their buy-in. Now, I don't again go with 20. I layer with another 2 things. We now do those for 4 weeks. I layer with another 2. We now do those for 4 weeks. And over again, a sustained period of time, maybe 6, maybe 12 months, they now have gone from point A to point B and seen huge change. But the strategy was very aligned to keep them on track as opposed to overwhelming them in that moment.
One of my final questions for you, Dan, is around things to aim for and things to aim away from. So you've given us some things to aim for in terms of some of these 3 or 4 habits you can start to introduce. Let's be adherent to them. Let's stack those. Let's prove to ourselves that that's going to work. What would be something that you would ask somebody to aim away from, like almost a heaven and a hell as we go into 2026 and we want to have a successful year?
Starts by don't bullshit yourself. Sit with yourself and be honest. Get a pen and paper and just say, is this appeasing me? Is this aligned with my goal, or is this moving me away from the goal? It could quite literally be as simple as a pros and cons list and a line down the middle. Put down what you think is going to get you closer to the goal. Again, it starts with the goal because you've got to know where you're going. Otherwise, how are you going to write this list? And then just write the positives that are going to get you close to the goal. Okay, environment. I've signed up to a gym. I bought a new tub of protein. I bought some new gym gear. I've downloaded Audible, and I'm going to start with Who Not How, or I'm going to start with Atomic Habits by James Clear. They're all positives, but the other side of that coin are the negatives. And maybe, and you've got to make this decision, depends how bad you want the goal. I'm going to stop hanging around with these 3 people for a period of time, or when I do go and catch up with them, I'm going to meet them for a coffee in the day as opposed to in the pub at night. And that's key. The next one might be, I'm not going to see those people. I'm not going to look at social media post 9 p.m. at night.
Yeah, put an ad blocker on. I use Opal.
Yeah. And let's just be real with ourselves. Let's be honest. Give ourselves this overall environmental audit and say, how bad do I really want it? Because I know these tasks, in reality, unless I address them, I know they're not going to get me close to my goal. In fact, the opposite. They're going to pull me away from it.
Dan, so good. I've had a tremendous time chatting to you, and I love the frameworks and the practical stuff that we brought to the table, as well as the identity and the depth to it. And we've managed to sprinkle in some personal stuff in your life, particularly that running example. I think a lot of people can recognise because they see you as the guy that just is almost like inch perfect every single day, but you had to address something to get towards where you wanted to get to. I'm sure the listeners have loved the conversation as well. Where should they head towards if they want to continue the conversation with you?
Thanks, Colin. Firstly, appreciate the conversation. And yeah, definitely not chasing perfection, but just chasing small wins and getting better every day. And that's me as well. I truly believe that. The word Kaizen that we said at the start. Instagram is Dan Lawrence 365, or Perform 365 is the other page. That's probably the best platform. Got LinkedIn as well, Dan Lawrence.
Both of those will be linked in the show notes. Thank you to Dan, and thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you again very, very soon.